Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I am really pleased to welcome you to the panel named Regional Development Policy led by local governments. My name is Marta Mackiewicz, and I'm representing Warsaw School of Economics, and it is my fifth Congress of Polish Clusters. And before I introduce our great panelists, and they are people with a huge, tremendous experience in regional developmental policy and implementing of smart specializations locally, great experts, and I will have an opportunity to introduce all the panelists to you. But before this happens, I would like to ask for a short invitation. Karolina Lipińska, the Deputy Director of the Economic Development Department Office of the Marshal of the Pomorskie Province. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. This presentation has been started, but I need to honestly say that by the end of this panel, I'd like to show this offshoring plan initiative to you, as we were talking about energy transformation in this. So if I may say a couple of words, I'd like to say thank you for your presence, for your being here. As you may know, here in Pomerania, we like having guests, and we usually concentrate on dialogue, cooperation, good relationships, as we know that if we have good relationships, if people like each other, they are going to do business, and it's going to be good business. And that was on the positive notes, as we are going to discuss a difficult matter. And I am not sure if this composition of the panel is a really good one, as we only have representatives of local government, and I think that what we need is a fresh blood, and we also need to have a fresh look at many things. And I wouldn't like to replace people, but I think we start considering to bring more young people to the panel, as in our discussions we believe that we all understand the cluster, the energy transformation, and the circular economy. And so with one breath, we are unable to list all these things, but people, other groups are going away, are running away. And we have been doing good work here. And it may also be true, but not the results we have been observing are not always satisfactory to us. And we have already discussed this, and that also the name of this panel is Regional Development Policy led by local government is, yes, of course, and now the situation is better, but of course we are still catching up others. Those who analyze statistics know what I have been talking about. It is not, the slides are not turning. Yes, this is it. I am not sure if you helped me from behind of this banner, or it's not working. Oh. After 20 years of working with the local government, but the statistics, not to say that all those things are so funny, but these are the facts. Thank you very much. These are unfortunately the facts that the bars are growing. We have been observing what is happening in innovations and competitiveness. Of course, we concentrate on expenditures and inventories, innovativeness, all this growing. But how should we perceive the regions? Some regions, their bars are higher, others have lower bars, but in our country, this is more or less similar, but if we measure our efforts. And if we compare it to those who are developing fastest in the world, it will turn out that, unfortunately, the distance is still there, and it is growing. And so what can we do to avoid this? And this is what we are going to discuss in this panel. And I decided to show the latest data on the level of development of innovations in the Pomeranian province. We have also representatives of other regions, and all of us are similar. Those flowers in between them are not very different one from another. What is important, the major problem of innovations in Poland is that we are not delivering all the innovations fully. We have a lot of power, we have animations, we have projects, we have good cooperation, and we have some products or services which can be innovative even globally, but unfortunately they seemingly on the final stage something wrong happens, and we are unable to deliver. So it may not be very clear, but those moderate innovator plus, so it is, unfortunately, we are not very happy. I am not satisfied or happy that that these names are used, as it doesn't show any progress. So what I did is the homework I did, as this is what I have been working on for a longer time. It is regional innovation strategies, regional development, etc. So what are the bottlenecks of managing of innovations in Poland? So it may seem to be controversial. You may agree with me, but I want to say that it is not only that we have only been talking about the reasons what's wrong, why we cannot catch up those highly developed countries, as the European Commission also perceives this as a problem, as the current tools used by countries or regions are not fully efficient and do not bring the results as we want them to be. And as for the bottlenecks, so the limited influence of local or regional governments on influence of improvements, the motivation of regional partners in development of innovation economy, and the freshness of Mr. Szurka was saying this at the first time. Those innovations may be fresh. We were catching up the West, and the innovations were very needed, and the companies were very happy to cooperate on this. And also what, unfortunately, we have been observing for a longer period, and I have some longer perspective, and the innovation process is simultaneous or parallel to what is happening in the market. So I hope that in the panel we will be talking about it as well, but I believe that many limitations we face in terms of innovations policy is based on the fact that a lot too much is happening, and the companies which are responsible for developing of innovations, they don't know if they should first digitize or start circular economy in their business, or implement or introduce artificial intelligence. There are too many things, and the responsibility is also huge, as we were talking during lunch. It is not only SMEs which have problems with implementation of all those novelties and important things to catch up and to follow this competitiveness in terms of European Union or globally, but big companies, big corporations in modern times also struggle with financial problems. And I'm not going to list any, but this would be very embarrassing, but there are billions corporations also have these problems. So how to base or who's going to be the driving force of the economy? So Marta, you have a huge challenge. To get from the panelists what we need to do despite the experience. Thank you, Carolina, for this great introduction and synthetic summary of the current status of Polish regions. And please be our first panelist and take your seat. And let's try here with the panelists to partially to address those difficult questions. And of course, more questions are going to arise after the panel. But I think that also we will be able to clarify many matters, and I hope that we will also have an opportunity to discuss how we can involve clusters to some activities. Activities to be carried out by local governments in their local policies. Let me now introduce other panelists. Marta Kruszewska, Director of the Economic Development Department, Office of the Marshal of the Kujawsko-Pomorskie Province, Bogumiła Kowalska, Office of the Marshal of the Silesian Province, Jarosław Flakowski, Director of the Development and Innovation Department, Office of the Marshal of the Lubuskie Province, and Justyna Lasak, the Deputy Director of the Economic Development Department, Department of Economy, Office of the Marshal of the Lower Silesian Province. The first question will go to Marta Kruszewska. We understand what the situation looks like, and it isn't really very efficient, as the Polish regions are ranked at the very bottom of the rankings in terms of the innovations, and not much has been changed. But 14 Polish regions ranked up and are closer to the average, European average, and we have other three, the innovativeness of which is growing slower than the average in the EU. So let me ask you for a summary in reference to what Carolina has said. What are the barriers and what makes it difficult to catch up European regions which are leading? I'd like to ask another person. I'm very sorry. Apologize. Paweł Weiss, Director of the Regional Development Department, Office of the Marshal of the Podkarpackie Province. So this is the enter of the dragon. I think that's all those charts were really good. So on a little bit more relaxed note, I would like to say that the cybersecurity and talking about closed-loop economy, but the matter is very serious. And as we all sit here, probably each of us would give a different response, or we can also say that we do not know, as we have been all really working hard, and we have been involving a lot of funds. But definitely for our region, for our province, the barrier can be the structure of the businesses and what is the difference between the big corporations and 99% of the companies so are small companies. They have their own limitations. They cannot take this big risk as the bigger companies can. And we can encourage them, or we also can offer them some grants, some programs, first contact with the universities. If we talk about innovations, we support their role and development in our centers of development, and we also provide them with advisory services. And secondly, I always have been advocating the idea that we need to listen first and propose some solutions of the problems and not to disturb others, as we should not wear the shoes which we should not wear, in fact, as the local government. Sometimes the public officials develop the problems to have something to work on, and probably we should be a part of the dialogue, and we should respond to the needs and not to make businesses happy as much as we can.
Okay, so we heard here that we are supposed to listen to the entrepreneurs and are supposed to listen to their needs. And this is where the process of entrepreneurial discovery is helping us. Not only that, but also all kinds of research surveys which are run either by the Marshal's Office or more comprehensive nationwide. And the question is, do we know the needs of those entrepreneurs? Karolina, could you comment on that? Are you working with the clusters right now to diagnose the entrepreneurial needs? Yes, we work with clusters all the time, uninterruptedly since 2009, when we first implemented the policy for the support of clusters in Pomorskie province, and we chose regional key clusters. And it is from that time that the very positive process of building the ecosystem for innovation in Pomorskie province started, when we started developing also the foundations for intelligence specializations. We were in a region that was the last to define the intelligence specializations. This is how long it took us. But I have to admit that all this was based on the cluster policy, which most of you represent today. It's also the fact that we are continuing this work as the department, going on with animation projects. I don't know, Marta, if I would agree with you in that we need to observe, not interrupt. Yes, not interrupt, but in my opinion, the initiative on the part of local authorities, local self-governments who are the closest to entrepreneurs, is very important, even more important today than the dozen or so years ago when we first started cooperating. It could then say, yeah, let's give them the tools, but not interfere. Today, so much is happening that we ourselves can see that we sometimes can't even handle our email boxes. So many new messages are arriving. Let's imagine what happens in a medium-sized company that has to face all of these channels and make decisions. So the process of animation and active support is very necessary and needed. And we are now looking at another project, and Marshal Bona mentioned it. It's Smart Green Progress. This is a trend that is going to be strongly supporting any collaboration between interest groups and consortia and clusters in our region. It is based on this database that we are going to be providing all possible tools. We're going to turn our pockets, trouser pockets, inside out to give out everything. Because we want to find out why we're lagging behind. Because Western countries, ladies and gentlemen, the policy that we are implementing now, they've had for 10 or 15 years providing such support. And they don't have a problem that governments are, they don't have a problem with governments providing support to champions and leaders. This is something that we do not have now. I'll stay with offshore. We don't have that. Why are our companies losing this race? Because they do not have this backing. In the coming years, maybe months, this is going to change and the support will become stronger. Bogumiła, I would like to ask you, do you have any thoughts about this subject? Because the process of entrepreneurial discovery is something you've been with since its very beginning. And So it's been 2 decades of implementing regional strategies for innovation. That's behind you. You were actively participating. Yeah, this is in the past. But you were actively implementing those strategies and innovations. Can these strategies bring about durable, permanent effects? And what conditions have to be met for those activities to be effective? Well, I've been doing it for quite a few years now, so when I can look at those attempts, yeah, let's be honest, we've all been there at the beginning of the innovation strategy in the early days. Yes, it is with pleasure that I will share with you some of my thoughts with regards to regional ecosystems of innovation. In Silesian province, which I represent, in our latest innovation strategy, we included an interesting material that I would like to encourage everybody to have a look at. It illustrates the process that we went through. We have 3 regional innovation strategy. In the first one, chronologically, we were explaining the terms, clusters, parks of technology, innovation. We were defining what it was, and we now have it. We meet at the beautiful 9th Cluster Congress, so there is clear progress. And in this original first innovation strategy, we were saying that we need to work with one another. We were saying we're defining what's trust in this collaboration. And we were talking about the first innovation ecosystems. We were calling them systems in the first strategy. In the second strategy, we upgraded our ambitions and requirements. And we are trying to build innovation ecosystems. So these would be such activities which have more ecosystem-oriented and also environmentally friendly elements. In this latest strategy for innovation, we are talking about the terms that were mentioned all the time here, the intelligent development, digital, and green. Whether we succeed or not, I hope we will. But when we talk about barriers, it seems that all of those 3 generations of regional innovation strategies demonstrated to us that as local self-governments in Poland, we've done the homework superimposed on us by the European Commission. So we learned to work together. I remember very clearly how it was when regional management was happening or taking place without regional strategies for innovation, without even regional development strategy. So these were ad hoc activities, not really being part of strategic planning. Now in regional innovation strategies, we are talking about the aspects related to the development of companies, but also the risk involved and a particular type of risk that companies undertake, because we're talking about going into advanced latest technologies. So again, looking at barriers, when we ask ourselves about the tremendous efforts that we've made, which have not brought about spectacular effects. Well, mainly because the condition of our companies, businesses, is not very good. If companies focus their activities on survival, on anti-inflation, and on copying solutions that will bring about the fastest profit, then these are not innovative activities. To be innovative, you have to invest money and you have to take risk. And this is the next element, the outlays for research and development. In the past, it was promised to the companies that they will be receiving 3% of GDP. Yeah, that was part of Lisbon strategy. We now know what the level actually is. So it all boils down to a single statement. We have to look after companies. We have to look after their development. They have to spend money on research and development. Companies need stable legislative environment. We should not interfere with them. So the tremendous amounts of money from the current perspective should be given to them. Thank you very much. I've already heard from two persons that the weak link is the companies and their condition, although I was convinced that the weakest link in this triangle, where we have academia, businesses, and administration, it's the academia, it's the science that's the weakest link. And I don't have the time to justify that statement, but since we're talking about strategies at regional level, I would like to ask Director Flakowski to say a few words about that. Lubuskie Voivodeship province is one of those that lose out to EU average in terms of innovation. So what are the strategies of the Marshal's office in Lubuskie? What tools are you trying to use in order to accelerate innovation in your province? Well, thank you for not making me the last to speak. And luckily, I had also the pleasure that the first strategic programming was something I was told about. So I did not participate in it. I'd only heard about it. So moving on to the question, I will disagree with the statement that Lubuskie is losing out. Karolina was showing some ratios today. We chose different ratios, different indicators, and I'm sure that my colleagues will agree with me that when we run statistics, you will always find those that will show you as stronger. I'm the sort of person who uses statistics as support for my activities. Now, as for programs, as voivodeship, in Lubuskie, we are at the stage of implementing the strategy for development, regional development. Last year, when we were taking the local parliament resolution in December that it's an adventure, we'll update it. It turned out that we entered the stage in which the Polish government is, so we're waiting for KPO to be started up. We prepared the initial concept for updating it all, but we decided to approach it in a non-standard way. It's not that there's going to be a key department responsible for strategy which will know it all. People will come, say something, and we'll make it nice and give it to the executive branch. We went differently. In addition to the basic statutory element, we do not want to be the leader for this project, for its preparation, but we want to be the party that listens to it and tries to aggregate the interests demonstrated in our region. The ladies mentioned earlier the issue of the condition of entrepreneurs and businesses. It's a similar situation in Lubuskie. A large company in Lubuskie is warehousing. If we think about the potential, it is SMEs. And from one strategy to another, we want to more strongly emphasize that you cannot design regional intelligence specialization at the level of public administration. We first have to listen to the stakeholders and try to respond to their needs. We don't really expect for the entrepreneur to come to us and say, I have an ache here and I want you to do that. We want to know what aches them, and we want to find a solution for that ache, for that problem. Another thing that we do is we have a relatively fresh innovation and development program. It was adopted in 2022 with a perspective until 2030. And unfortunately, we're right now we have to update it. The outside situation, external situation is dynamic. We talked about various factors, AI, dynamic change in other programs. So we are trying to not to be passive and be delighted with the documents that we've produced and adopted and monitor them from the side, but we want those documents to be alive, if possible. Without taking any more of your time, I'd like to put a full stop here. Okay, now the question goes to Director Paweł Weiss. What about Podkarpackie Voivodeship? What's the situation there? The European Commission every now and then suggests new instruments that we can use in order to support regional development. Recently, we've had innovation valleys, digital innovation hubs. That was discussed in a previous session. And Podkarpackie, how is Podkarpackie planning to use those new instruments? And are they going to bring about positive effects in Polish conditions? Thank you very much for this question. Thank you very much for the invitation, the ability to share with you some of my thoughts. I will start with statistics because, unlike my colleague, I agree that when we want to prove something, we can select the correct indicators. But for your own purposes, we can't really support or program economic development if you don't look realistically at the processes that are taking place in the economy. So my thoughts for regional innovation strategy are that while the first start of those strategies met with some interest on the part of the entrepreneurs, at the second stage, it was just limited to those who had some success at the first stage. So for us, in the third stage, it was important to appeal more broadly. So we started we're trying to redefine our intelligence specialties and redefine our economic approach so that we could respond to the question of, in the scale of our regional economy, how important is a given specialization? The indicators that Madam Director showed on the slides clearly indicate regional diversification. We are a region of paradox, but we have strong industry, and those industrial traditions affect our economic potential. So the public and private outlays for R&D are quite important here. One more important thing is that we are learning to use different instruments at regional level and at local level. And our experiences allow us to put some more level of precision and definition on those instruments and also find the right addressees. At the local level, we have to admit that local authorities are a completely different partner today. In the past, we used to talk about economic development with mayors, and they would say, yeah, we first need to satisfy the needs of the inhabitants. I have not met today a mayor who would not be interested in reinforcing or on building infrastructure for business. So we moved from swimming pool to business. So we were learning how to manage business from administration side, how to create strategies. This is the new edition of the new issue of regional programs. I know that entrepreneurs talk to us and they say, yeah, there's bureaucracy and it's full of absurdities. But then again, we are only the distributors of the bigger players, and it's the people who provide funds that define rules that we then have to follow. The truth is also that we have to be very careful on that minefield, because our regional budget will guarantee every failure. I know that our postulates for innovation and the idea that we have to accept risk should reach the European Commission, but they are not. We're talking about a situation the beneficiary will guarantee success. However, innovation is risk. We say, therefore, let's monitor the procedures, let's not put too much emphasis on the necessary effect, or measuring the effect. Another thing that we can do is to experiment in innovation. We participate in such innovations as EU's Catching Up. As part of this initiative, we designed an an agency, institution, which in our opinion was supposed to respond to the main problem, which was the link between science or research and business. You are right, we are lacking stronger support from the academia. So we wanted to help those various institutions to cope with it. Did we succeed? Not necessarily, but we're not treating this at the end of the road. We believe that it's the beginning. For us, what was most important was not to discourage the partners, not to scare them away. We could go to the university and say, show us your procedures, show us your grants, and we could look at it and evaluate it negatively. But we don't want to alienate universities. We have to encourage them to participate. As for innovation valleys, this is another initiative that we applied for this in the third path. In our opinion, it's the easiest and the most cautious one. What we're missing is going international. We are afraid to do networking with regions because we do, but not as leaders. So far we're learning, we're copying, but the leaders are usually regions from more advanced countries. For now, this is a fact, but this is really a broader jigsaw puzzle, and we need to pick up some more EU potential in this competitive world, because before us are tremendous turbulences. When we talk about strategic programming, when we create new strategies for the regions, we have to be visionaries. Today, nobody can tell me when will the war in Ukraine ever end, and it affects the situation of the region very strongly. So these are the real facts that we have to consider when we program and create instruments.
A lot of interesting ideas appeared, starting from cooperation with local governments and also these elements which are to help us better forecast what is going to happen in the future. And also the question which will go to all of you, are you using those foresight solutions tools, or they developed so if we speak about foresight, so I will be happy to respond. This is our favorite tool, and many regions, I believe, use this to different extent. But in the Silesian province, we have experiences on development of technology. And as a long time ago, as in 2010, we developed our technology development program, where we outlined the technology areas which would be, in our opinion, and we had consensus here in the region, as we have been using a large number of expert groups. And it was a long-lasting, couple of years-long projects in 2006. And we had a consensus on the technology areas which would be, or where technology would be a leading aspect in development of the Silesian province. And at that time, also the European Commission recommended to regions, the local governments, identification of smart specializations, and we based our smart specializations on technology. So for us, the foresight processes are a really good instrument to run technological development. And currently, we are developing a foresight model up to 2050, and we intend to address this process to the biggest activity in the region. I mean, the power generation transformation in the region. So I mean transition from the heavy industry coal-based power generation to, as we hope, the latest technologies. And this process has been outlined up to 2030, and the technology will be addressed with the perspective up to 2050. And Justyna, in Lower Silesian province, how do you identify new developmental possibilities? Are there any opportunities which are not used yet? If I wouldn't be able to see those opportunities, I wouldn't be able to work for the local government of the Silesian province. And I think all those challenges you have heard about, mentioned by Karolina also, and panels before the lunch break, all those challenges are also opportunities we are all facing, and you as coordinators or clusters, members of the clusters, public administration and the entire environment, we have been very broadly going outside of discussing of clusters only. Please forgive us, as these are the matters we have been dealing with for a couple of dozens of years, and we have been meeting regularly. So this is our core activity, like smart specializations and smart inventories. So when businesses hear all those phrases, they are not probably willing to continue the discussion with us. And the Lower Silesian province, in the chart showed by Karolina, it is in the privilege group in terms of the ratio, but we are not fully satisfied, as despite these optimistic ratios, we still are ranking at the bottom in terms of the most innovative and advanced. Our cluster policy has been introduced a couple of dozens years ago, and we also have been assigning some own funds. And after some years, we did an evaluation, and it turned out that unfortunately some of those initiatives did not manage to survive, but the knowledge skills did survive. And those coordinators do have this knowledge, and despite the optimistic ratios, we only have one key national cluster, and it is good that they are gathering companies dealing with biomedicine. I mean, Nutribione cluster, and in this very strong economic environment, very well developed startups in the space industry. As the local government, we would also be happy to have those clusters initiatives in other industries. And only recent, so this is manufacturing, but this cluster is also operating, but this is not the key. Yes, so we have two clusters, key clusters. So even local governments can forget about some clusters. So we have reviewed the clusters initiatives in our province, and we have 20, like in automotive industry or ICT, very vibrantly developing cluster. 9 clusters are power generation clusters, and the most dynamic development is in this area. And I believe this is a response to the question, to the matter mentioned at the beginning of this Congress. So this is a response to all those challenges regarding the energy transition. And this increasing number of energy clusters has been dynamic over the last years. And these clusters are bottom-up initiatives. And without seeing those opportunities in cluster development, we wouldn't be able to propose support to clusters in our new perspective, support to circular economy, supporting digital transition and the green technologies. And I'd like to emphasize that this is money going mainly to professionalization of clusters, to businesses, to members of clusters, but also to those who would like to apply to be members of clusters. And so when I did a review of clusters and when I was asking clusters for their opinion on the situation in the Lower Silesian province, we heard that after so many years of running of cluster policy was a little bit concerning, as companies have too little awareness of how much they should be, or how they can be members of clusters and how they can benefit. And there is also a little social and cooperation culture awareness. And after so many years, this lesson should have been done, but it is not. And probably we should now level up and increase expenditures on R&D or innovative services and products. But still, we have to talk about all these things. We started talking in 2009 and 10, and the biggest opportunity, or a big opportunity in our perception, is in internationalization of businesses. So we want to find those businesses which are the most promising, the most innovative, and who will have also those chances to be members of the European and world's value chains. And we have this financial range of support to internationalize businesses, and those opportunities are not used by the Polish businesses. So I think there are a lot of possibilities still to develop on different levels internally, build culture of cooperation and leveling up to R&D, and also going beyond the region, beyond Poland, to European and world markets. Thank you, Karolina. And I'd like to make a reference to the rector said. You mentioned a couple of interesting ideas, plots, and I'd like to comment on these. There are two major ones. First, innovation volleys, as the rector mentioned. As the European Commission last year in October published a new innovation strategy on support for innovations in European Union, and I think that may be controversial that this is a strategy for richer countries which can faster respond, faster consume the funds, and based on that they can develop innovations in their countries. And even innovation valleys, as we have been whispering at the backstage, that as you are representing also different regions, and my question is, have you started in projects on innovation valleys with a partner? Are there any regions? Yeah, this is it. It shows a lot, as we have also been trying to submit a proposal as an active partner, not only observer. But the efficiency of our colleagues in different countries, and Spain, they are champions, they are masters. They are so quickly and efficiently do things, and this is something what we should also strengthen here, as we are lacking this institutional efficiency. My impression is that we are traveling with those files, with those long-lasting strategies, and we cannot see what is happening on a daily basis. And I believe that this is a big loss, that no Polish region actively is not going to participate, as the thing is, the first come, first served. And the money can be easily achieved. And even if they fail to get all the things they want, they still gain some experiences. They have experiences. They establish relationships with other regions. They also develop their perception as natural leaders. As big projects, this is something people want to work on with those people who are reliable. And another thing I'd like to mention, which is also difficult to discuss, but let me just give you an example. On the 1st of December, we are organizing the Christmas meeting of the offshore platform. Feel invited. So I wanted to invite people also from the European Commission for us to see the perspective of development of offshore. We have now new programs to support and strengthen this industry, as this industry is struggling, as some investments have been stopped because of a huge cost these investments will require. And the information I get is they are really busy working on another plan. And I can understand this, but what we are lacking is sometimes we probably need to detach from ourselves. So we are probably too much fixed to optics we have, but we forget. We do not do checkings, and as probably people do not have the needs of the things we are working on. And so in our meetings, like it was initiated by Marta many years ago, to have probably we also should have representatives of European Commission in our meetings. This would help us to avoid a lot of discussions, problems, and communication, as you have been talking about, ladies. And so, as we are far away, and at the bottom, all those needs and the potentials are different. And let me also add on top of that that the same is with the need of verifying of what is happening on the national level in our investments. I know that Madam Director is not going to like what I'm going to say, but you know that this is what I think. We should not only aggregate these areas, we should concentrate on potentials and the national potentials, and these potentials are in regions, in our regions. So we have good things to show. We need to take the risk where the risk is the biggest, where the most expensive things are. This is where the money should go, as this is what the money is intended to be spent for. Yeah, as you mentioned myself, so let me comment on what Karolina said, and let me also comment on the barriers. So this is all about handling of developing of the strategies and programs. So this is this academic work. As we need to be clear here that these strategies developed by public offices is not the most important for businesses. Companies, it is important what money they have, what their action plans is in 15 or 30 years, for 1 or 2 years ahead, as those strategies which are developed in public offices, despite the fact that a lot has been changed and they are consulted when they are being developed or even before the assumptions are made. So these are strategies developed for the public offices, public authorities, and the EU funds investments and all this circulating in the economy. This is just a fraction, and we need to understand that our activities is incubating, encouraging educational first contact activity when we have those contacts of businesses with academia. And all these things go as they do, and as a local government, in fact, our influence is limited. And as Karolina said about a regional forum of smart platforms, as a founder of that forum, like 10 years ago, we had a convent of marshals in Toruń, and we invited all the regions for cooperation. We also invited the key ministries and representatives of the European Commission. Marek Przeor also was a member of this section of smart specializations, and that was a new concept. And in each perspective, there is a concept, and but the names are different, but all the things are the same. So these can be endogenic potentials or smart specializations, or as the Czechs say, or smart specializations. So we need to be experts on something. We need to know what we are strong with, and not only here, but also in Europe or worldwide, what we can export, or how can we attract external investors. And whatever we include in our strategies and how long they are, how extensive they are, business will know the direction they need to develop, and we can incubate, we can encourage, we can run the dialogue, we can gather, we can learn, or help academia and businesses to learn each other. We can be some kind of brokers. but we should not exaggerate our role, overestimate our role, as this is my first very skeptic presentation, was to show that we need to know our position in this helix, quadruple helix, as we need to know how we can help as the companies are tired with our questionnaires, focuses, groups, meetings, assessments, evaluations. Companies have time for this once every 6 months for doing this, and we can invite them once every week. And so this is too much, and we do this for our own needs, and we understand that these strategies are developed to know how to distribute money and how these financial streams should go into different industries or specializations, whatever we name them. Nevertheless, the biggest challenge for the public administration is to have this common sense and to have this hygienic border of what we want to know and what we can offer to them. Yes, and the clusters can be used as some kind of intermediary or a voice of businesses in contact with the Marshal's office to make those strategies based on actual needs of businesses. But now let me pass the floor to Paweł Weiss, who wanted to add on top of that. I would like to mention also the innovation volleys. We generally wanted, as when we did the query in our province, we wanted to be a part of it, but there are some barriers. The first barrier is the information barrier. It is how the innovation volleys should look like. It is not clear. We know that they are going to be developed throughout the process. We can agree to that. We will then add more to this. Also, the budget involvement is not clear. Okay, we have some money we can use. Either these are EU funds or from other sources, extra budget sources, and we can agree that this money will be spent somehow. But the problem is that we want, first of all, them to go to our businesses, and then this formula where we want to network, when we need to do networking, we are aware that our economic potential is that our businesses will be partners, not leaders. So the question is, are we going to have these opportunities to go with our money where we want to go? So that's our concept. So knowing that this process, this is the process which European Commission is recommending, we don't want to stand aside. So we want to be involved. We want to look at things, and we want to take next steps, and we want to get more involved if more things are clarified. But the problem is that currently we have 95% of population, which is small and medium-sized enterprises, and they struggle with surviving from one day to another. And the big companies, these are majorly usually international corporation, and it affects our innovativeness. And the big companies can apply for innovations, and they can split this R&D process into stages. And small companies or medium-sized companies not necessarily goes to us, as they are afraid that they will have to make their R&D works public, and this is a very big problem for them. So there are quite a lot of barriers, and we want to be involved, and we are also aware that we are not going to work instead of economy. We are just developing an environment for economy. We need to create good conditions, but we are not going to do the job instead of others. So our partner, the most clear partner, is, from our perspective, it is difficult to chase businesses, and there are many of them. They are small. So all groups of businesses, clusters, makes our work more convenient, and this is what we require, what we need. And we have 27 clusters. So we are a hub of clusters, a center of clusters. But I think that each clusters need to answer the question how active they are. So of course, we like all of them. We want all of them to develop, but there are some very active clusters, but there are also some clusters that are not so much active.
Actually, that is a good proposal, what you just said, for clusters, because when we talk about innovation valleys, there was little time for this, but seeing that we have problems in government and local government agencies, that we have a problem, council consultancies from upper shelf started approaching us in local administration and supporting us. Why? Because they know there's money to be taken, money to be earned. I would really love a situation where in Pomorskie the clusters existed that are efficient at acquiring funds. They're good at mobilizing quickly, and they can support also our activities. When we would together acquire external funding. We haven't talked about this, but the optics of looking at things from the perspective of funding is now different than even a few years ago. Usually we looked at regional money. Regional operational programs was what we were looking at first, and this was always the first step to show to the companies, here, this is where the money is for you. Now, the perspective is completely different. There are very many international programs, and resources is attached to the EU Commission, to Horizon, to other programs. We have a shortage of organizations, such as, for instance, clusters could be, who would help get that money into the region. But now, adding to what you said, this is the issue that was discussed by Director Schultka before the break, institutional capability and institutional capacity for fully utilizing these funds. Relying entirely on clusters, on reaching for these funds, is a road that leads to nowhere. We couldn't hear the response. I agree, but clusters are just one of the many links. We have agencies that support regional development. We have other agencies around in the business which specialize in consultancy. They should be building up the entire ecosystem that Bogusia mentioned. For me, the main question is, aren't we imposing too many obligations on some cluster organizations, because we see them as unions of businesses, providers of consultancy, providers of transfer of technology services, and showing them also the entire range of opportunities for funding. I think this is perhaps a suggestion for a further discussion. We should also mention something that comes up in the examples that were given here. We do not have a continuation in cluster funding across financial perspectives, especially from the point of view of regional levels. So there was a kind of split. There was a fashion for clusters, we're giving money. No fashion for clusters, we're not giving. It went up and down, and the lack of continuity resulted in a situation where in our region, in addition to clusters that used to function since SPOR, there are some clusters that appeared in the period 7 to 13 where clusters were fashionable, and their activity was better or worse, uneven, variable. Some of them required further incubation, so funding for development, allowing them to make progress. And then suddenly they would be supposed to end up at the very high level, making them eligible for national funds. But it was not common practice in all regions, and it was not possible in all regions. So we established something, and then we let it die natural death. Unnecessarily, it was not pleasant to watch. So another barrier and lesson learned is we have to have continuity in all our initiatives. So we don't have to start competition immediately at international arena, where we are, in some cases, just the beginners. But please note that we have the knowledge of how to do it and what to do, because you said that if we want something to be developed, what do we need to do? We have to provide significant financial support. Today, what we do is splitting the funds into smaller parts because we don't prioritize. We don't look at, from the perspective of our country or region, at areas where we could get global advantage, because we prefer to give a little bit to everyone rather than focus the resource on specific technologies where these funds should go. And that's why, unfortunately, we have no results. When we talk about foresight, looking from the perspective of various foresights that were carried out, they don't consider, for instance, a strategic technology like a quantum technology, which is probably the future of computers in general, and the future of many other technologies, and cybersecurity, as discussed in the previous panel. Why? I don't quite understand that. It is often the response is that it's too expensive. Yes, let's go and invest in the expensive technologies where business alone won't be able to get the money alone on its own. That was genius, Carolina. That was brilliant. Our first strategy had the motto of dreams create reality. And it seems that after this part of the panel where we are complaining and talking about barriers, let's talk about dreams now. Yes, this is our truth. In the current deal, 21-27, when we look at the cluster-related policy, the local authorities, we gave away the best parts to the national level, so key clusters that were created in the regions. They will now be supported at the national level, while we will be dealing with the remaining clusters. We'll be dealing with the small fish, inverted commas. Carolina just now noted that the key clusters used to be small fish in the past. I'm sorry, it was Justyna. Indeed, these are our dreams that came true. But before us, we're facing challenges that Carolina showed us using the benchmark, showing where we are in terms of innovation level. If we are chasing the leaders, the European leaders of innovation, the catching up process is taking a long time, so we are kind of slow chasing them up. For me, the real model for cluster policy is French clusters. They really have created large, strong clusters through consistent and continued policy. I'm making a reference here to the fact that in the country or at the level of EU, we are feeling financing gaps. But those clusters are the pupil in the eye of the French innovation policy. And indeed, the level of innovation, I am looking at their level of innovation and advancement, I'm delighted. And the durability and sustainability of those clusters, I would really wish to have such durable, large and successful clusters focusing on key technologies. I'll allow myself to add something here. Nobody prevents local authorities to work with national key clusters. No, collaboration will be going on. It's still possible. But we're talking about direct financial support. Well, direct support is one thing, but collaboration at regional level is another. And this collaboration really can be initiated by the regional authorities, by province authorities, for instance, by implementing the model which we know doesn't really work. So the support for regional development based on clusters. We are going slowly towards the end of the panel, but I saw that you wanted to add something, Jarek. Two brief remarks. Carolina mentioned ambitious dreams and plans. I think our plans must be ambitious, of course. But also, in retrospect, we have to keep in mind that our strategic documents that we create should correspond with the reality that gives us a check. I know examples, not from our country, but from one of our neighboring countries, a strategy where one of the local authorities dreamt of having healthcare sector being developing. The problem was they didn't even have the starting point. Looking at ideas, we have to consider that we are where we are. In order to go forward, we have to first accept where we are, and based on this acceptance, we have to start thinking about ambitious goals for the future. As for cooperation with the clusters, we have zero key clusters, but it's the second time now, lubuskie. But I've attended this event for the second time, and we have a cluster that kind of encouraged me to do this, which is the Lubuskie Metal Cluster. And it's the first time I managed to secure specific funds for this cluster at regional level, which are hopefully going to lead them to the key national cluster status. So this is an example of let's make our dreams come true. Our dream is that in 2 years' time, this cluster becomes national key. One last comment then. Yes, I wanted to relate to what my colleague said, and also Madam Professor from Lubuskie, when she said that everything depends on people. When we talked earlier in the previous panels, we have to talk to one another. We have to believe in ourselves. So the profit and loss account for a cluster has to be positive. So if we don't convince ourselves that this is a good initiative, no one else will convince us. You want to have hope, you want to succeed, count on yourself. In Bydgoszcz, we have the key cluster, which is the tool industrial cluster located in the city of Bydgoszcz. Clearly, there had to be people who had to communicate and see the common goal, because without it, we would never create the tool valley in our region. Thank you. A formula of the panel discussion does not provide a Q&A session, but I received a request for one brief comment. So I'd like to allow for that. And I'd like to leave some time for Karolina Lipińska to invite us all to an extraordinary event. I'll be very brief then. Greetings from Podlaskie Voivodeship. The representatives were invited, but they couldn't come. I'd like to support all the panelists in the idea that it's worth dreaming. In our region, we have cluster projects defined as strategic projects for the Voivodeship. It's metal fabrication cluster and construction cluster. And we've had this collaboration for 15 years, and we started with the small fishes that you had. We were the first region in Poland where there were key clusters, where most of the statistics mentioned today would not indicate Podlaskie as the leader. So we can get there working consistently. Also, we'd like to emphasize the work on European arena of the Association of Polish Clusters. It was the EU Commission that agreed to it. But also our regional authorities worked with us in partnership. What's important is for the administration sector and business sector to work hand in hand. Also in our case, there was a tremendous role played by the science. I will disagree, because Białystok University of Technology provided us with tremendous support, and the triple helix or quadruple helix is working. So it's worth dreaming, because in Podlaskie we are succeeding, and we have approval from Brussels, and we are applying at the level of Horizon and EU Commission competitions, and we bring in funds not only to the region, because we have members from 14 voivodeships, and we also work with Lubuskie and their metal cluster, and we're only picking up speed now. Thank you very much for this intervention. I'll try to very briefly summarize this panel. I think that from this discussion we have the following conclusions. What the local self-government and the marshal offices can provide and should provide is mainly access to the best knowledge, expert knowledge, with other partners that they work with, but also the attempt to improve social capital. So the emphasis is on collaboration and developing trust, which is still at a relatively low level. It's probably one of the barriers that we've been discussing. It seems to me that the strategies that were received so many bitter comments today are really documents that are serving administration more than entrepreneurs today. So even here, we could direct them more towards something that's promoted among the entrepreneurs, providing them guidelines in which directions to develop. It's also worth using clusters at least to carry out the promotional activities to promote the knowledge of what's in the strategies. Also using foresight methods and other known methods allowing for the prediction of future development directions, but also maybe researching competition that exists in the European markets, with the emphasis on not just developing products alone, but also supplying business strategy with the products, because products alone won't sell. There has to be business strategy. Thank you very much to all panelists for the participation. Thank you for sharing your reflections. And now, Karolina, I'd like to give you the floor. Yes, as the host, I have a bit of the say on when the dessert is served. I'd like to invite you all, including the panelists, to have a look at this very briefly. I was very keen to also invite you as participants in the Congress to work together on the initiative that we started up for the first time in March this year, and we're going to be duplicating it. I don't know if you've noted, but the panel that we had as number one, how to make money on green transition, ended with a conversation about education and need for education. So that is why I wanted to show this to you today and invite you heartily to work together, because I see tremendous potential for people, because we are all going to be hovering around green energy in the future. And the main slogan for this initiative is contaminating young people with passion to green energy. Because in Pomerania, the backbone for this activity for us is offshore. And that was the main theme for the March trade show. But next year, in March again, 5th and 6th, we're creating an island for energy transition, which will include subjects that will cover hydrogen. Żaneta Wostowska talked about what the hydrogen cluster was doing. Energy storage, nuclear power. There are very many possibilities. And the girl that's looking out to the sea, looking at the horizon, there's a reason why we chose this image. We really want to show the industries that may seem typically masculine. We want to emphasize that there is room for girls and women in those industries. And this is very important for us. And the entire initiative is addressed to young people, in post-primary schools. This is when young people decide about their career paths for the future. Should I continue education, go to university, or should I go to work and gain specific skills, choose a career and a profession? We also are looking at students. Students as such are not the only target group, because as you indicated, university level, that's a little late. The changes in educational programs at that level take a long time. So our educational trade show Edu Offshore Wind is the final touch in our entire educational project, in which has been going on in Pomorskie since November last year, because we've identified 540 schools in our region alone that we can reach and start infecting the young people with passion for green energy. This is an example of a photo from a class, from a lesson. Our crews go to smaller schools, vocational, schools of technology, grammar schools. We have a film on YouTube, which is a zero beginners level film on how to teach about offshore, how to teach young people about green energy. So we use a wide range of channels to reach young people. Of course, young people are more difficult to reach because anything that doesn't go through a smartphone and cannot be touched with a finger doesn't exist for young people. They won't be interested. So Social Ninja work with us as well, and they make a lot of rumor among they make a lot of noise among the young people. This is what the trade show looked like. Young people could try their hand at welding. We had EVs. We have more than 70 exhibitors who are telling young people of what sort of job you can do if you employ yourself with them. We also distributed information leaflets where on page 2 every profession was described which could be had as part of offshore wind energy, where you can get qualifications and education, how much you can earn. It was very interesting for young people, also very interesting for the teachers. This year we did not manage to go international with this very strongly, but we plan Baltic Challenge for next year. We're going to bring in young people from the Baltic Sea area, where for 2 years they're going to work on finding a solution to a specific problem defined by offshore companies. So new optics, new outlook, young people. I'm sure there will be many unconventional suggestions and proposals, and it will be well received by the companies who have been dealing with these problems for years. Now some statistics. The presentation is going to be available to you. I'm sure that the emotions that you see in the faces of the young people, their engagement in experiment, putting cables together, that was really the best reward for us, because we really had little time to organize this trade show, but we had an excellent crew. Monika, Łukasz, Agnieszka, who are here in this room. Thank you very much for your work, and we want more, because we want to increase the scale, we want to be larger, and we want to have 8,000 people, 8,000 young people to visit this two-day trade show. I'd like to invite you all to participate. Clusters, agencies, organizations, be with us. It's a great example that can be replicated, how to catch the interest of young people in a certain branch of industry. Thank you very much.
Fundusze europejskie w latach 2014-2020 to m.in. sukcesy polskich przedsiębiorców, wsparcie dla jednostek samorządu terytorialnego oraz dynamiczny rozwój ośrodków innowacji poprzez wydarzenia, szkolenia, finansowanie, edukację oraz wspieranie współpracy przedsiębiorstw. Lata 2014-2022 to 13 tysięcy umów o dofinansowanie i 15,3 miliarda złotych przyznanego dofinansowania na terenie całej Polski. Nasi beneficjenci są bardzo pomysłowi. Wprowadzają na rynek np. innowacyjne dachowe wymienniki ciepła, dofinansowane z programu operacyjnego Polska Wschodnia. Skonstruowali innowacyjny szybowiec wyczynowy, dofinansowany z programu operacyjnego Inteligentny Rozwój. Wprowadzają też projekty doradcze, takie jak Sukcesja z sukcesem, dofinansowanie z programu operacyjnego Wiedza, Edukacja, Rozwój. Fundusze Europejskie 2021-2027 to nowa perspektywa finansowa. Jest ona kontynuacją programów z poprzedniej perspektywy i obejmuje fundusze europejskie dla rozwoju społecznego, fundusze europejskie dla Polski Wschodniej i fundusze europejskie dla nowoczesnej gospodarki. Fundusze europejskie. Razem przed siebie.
Historia przemysłu to historia transformacji i napędzających ją wizjonerów. Oto śruba. Kiedyś musiał wykuć ją kowal, każdą z osobna. Setki i tysiące śrub. Nie było dwóch identycznych, więc w tamtym świecie każda maszyna była rękodziełem. Pięknym, ale mało efektywnym. Idea, że śruby można produkować maszynowo, narodziła się w głowie jednego człowieka. Standaryzacja części zamiennych rozpędziła rewolucję przemysłową. Bez standaryzacji nie byłoby przemysłu. Lampa naftowa, żarówka, nawet karabin maszynowy – to wszystko wynalazki pojedynczych geniuszy. W XIX wieku transformację przemysłową napędzali wizjonerzy. Nasi dziadkowie postrzegali przemysł z perspektywy linii montażowej. Praca rąk setek lub tysięcy ludzi, prosta optymalizacja i efekt skali tworzyły przemysłowe imperia. Komputeryzacja oraz automatyzacja zmieniły układ sił i sprawiły, że ludzie zaczęli pracować ramię w ramię z robotami, a wynalazczość przeniosła się do centrów R&D. Równocześnie dane stały się surowcem, takim jakim dotąd była ropa. Dziś niezwykle istotny jest elastyczny model produkcji, który pozwala szybko reagować na potrzeby klientów. Bez modernizacji parku maszynowego oraz infrastruktury ciężko jest utrzymać konkurencyjność na globalnym rynku. Zmienia się sposób myślenia o miejscu i roli pracowników, bo transformacja cyfrowa bardzo zależy od kompetencji oraz talentów ludzi. Wdrożenie rozwiązań przemysłu przyszłości wymaga szerokiego horyzontu i zdolności organizacyjnych. Przedsiębiorca XXI wieku musi wiedzieć, jak efektywnie i bez szkody dla środowiska wykorzystać zasoby, jak szkolić kadry i reagować w ciągle zmieniającym się otoczeniu biznesowym. Skorzystaj z wiedzy oraz doświadczenia ekspertów Platformy Przemysłu Przyszłości. Pomagamy w cyfrowej transformacji do przemysłu 4.0.
Planując ekspansję na nowych rynkach, potrzebujesz ekspertów, którzy pomogą Ci zminimalizować ryzyko. Potrzebujesz profesjonalistów, którzy od lat funkcjonują w lokalnej rzeczywistości i potrafią dotrzeć do właściwych osób. Skontaktuj się z nami. Polska Agencja Inwestycji i Handlu to stale rosnąca sieć biur na 6 kontynentach. Sprawdź, co możesz zyskać, bo sukces zaczyna się od informacji.
Cyfrowa platforma HR 4.0 to nowa usługa klastra SAM umożliwiająca przygotowanie i rozwój kompetencji kadr przyszłości, szczególnie w obszarze HR. Dostęp do bazy wiedzy. Wymianę dobrych praktyk ekspertów HR. Wsparcie pośrednictwa pracy i pozyskiwania talentów do organizacji. Współpracę biznes-edukacja. Skontaktuj się z nami w celu skorzystania z usługi. Film promocyjny dofinansowany ze środków Unii Europejskiej w ramach Europejskiego Funduszu Rozwoju Regionalnego.
MŚP Go Digital to nowa usługa klastra SAM dedykowana małym i średnim firmom produkcyjnym, której celem jest wsparcie w procesach transformacji cyfrowej i wdrażania rozwiązań przemysłu 4.0. Usługa podzielona została na 2 obszary. Część demonstracyjno-szkoleniową realizowaną przy użyciu mobilnego Centrum Demonstracyjnego Przemysłu 4.0 oraz wirtualnej fabryki cyfrowe MŚP oraz część doradczo-konsultingową, w ramach której ekspert przy współpracy z odbiorcą usługi stworzy plan transformacji cyfrowej przedsiębiorstwa. Skontaktuj się z nami w celu skorzystania z usługi. Film promocyjny dofinansowany ze środków Unii Europejskiej w ramach Europejskiego Funduszu Rozwoju Regionalnego.
Lubuskie to region pełen możliwości. Tutaj możesz odpoczywać, uczyć się i rozwijać swoją karierę. Tutaj znajdziesz atrakcje turystyczne, znakomite uczelnie i nowatorskie szpitale. Tutaj spotkasz się z ludźmi, którzy mają wizję i pasję.
Wyobraź sobie, że oglądasz film w otoczeniu największych gwiazd Hollywood, a godzinę później jesteś w samym środku obrazu Van Gogha. Już po chwili popijasz cydr w urokliwym sadzie, planując dalszą podróż. Wieczorem jesteś pod największą tężnią solną w Europie i smakujesz piernika z miasta, w którym żył ten, co wstrzymał słońce i ruszył ziemię. Potrafisz to sobie wyobrazić? Nie musisz. Wszystko to znajdziesz w Kujawsko-Pomorskiem.
ARP i Vehicles to nowa, a jednocześnie mogąca poszczycić się dużymi osiągnięciami marka w grupie kapitałowej ARP. Powołana do życia przez Agencję Rozwoju Przemysłu w 2020 roku kontynuuje projekt produkcji pierwszego polskiego zeroemisyjnego autobusu, wcześniej realizowany przez Rafaco. Inwestycja ARP wpisuje się w światowe trendy rozwoju elektromobilności i bezemisyjnego transportu.
ARP i Vehicles jest to projekt realizowany w ramach rządowej strategii odpowiedzialnego rozwoju. Jest to jeden z 2 przyjętych kierunków rozwoju elektromobilności w Polsce. My odpowiadamy za ten projekt związany z e-busem, czyli elektrycznymi autobusami, zeroemisyjnymi autobusami. To autobus, który jest przede wszystkim autobusem polskim. Od początku został on zaprojektowany przez wielu polskich inżynierów. Zaprojektowany z myślą o tym, żeby jak najwięcej podzespołów było właśnie produkcji polskiej. Dlatego ponad 60% komponentów właśnie jest produkcji i pochodzenia polskiego. Spółka nie jest spółką mającą tak wielką tradycję jak chociażby polski Autosan, ale jesteśmy spółką bardzo dynamicznie rozwijającą się, która z roku na rok zwiększa swoje przychody. Nie możemy narzekać na brak zamówień. Sukcesy na targach czy w Brukseli, czy podwójny sukces w Kielcach, czy Plovdiv, czy Saloniki, to wszystko spowodowało, że portfel zamówień mamy wypełniony maksymalnie.
We wrześniu 2020 roku Agencja Rozwoju Przemysłu sfinalizowała umowę zakupu od Rafaco spółki celowej Rafaco e-Bus. Tym samym przejęła kontrolę nad projektem konstrukcyjno-technologicznym polegającym na opracowaniu, homologacji i rozpoczęciu seryjnej produkcji innowacyjnego autobusu elektrycznego. Dzisiaj projekt ten jest rozwijany z powodzeniem przez spółkę ARP i Vehicles.
Produkowany przez nas autobus to jedno z najbardziej innowacyjnych osiągnięć polskiej inżynierii ostatnich lat. W jego konstrukcji wykorzystaliśmy pionierskie rozwiązanie polegające na umieszczeniu baterii nie na dachu, ale pod podłogą pojazdu. Dzięki temu istotnie obniżono środek ciężkości autobusu, co z kolei wpływa na stabilność toru jazdy, bezpieczeństwo i łatwość prowadzenia. Pomimo baterii pod podłogą, autobus jest całkowicie niskopodłogowy na całej długości oraz w pełni przystosowany do przewozu osób niepełnosprawnych na wózkach. Nasze autobusy są także wyposażone w innowacyjne silniki w nowoczesnej technologii PMSM, które gwarantują niezawodność i doskonałe osiągi, przyspieszenie, moc, sprawność oraz niezawodność autobusu.
Zielony transport to przyszłość komunikacji. Agencja Rozwoju Przemysłu aktywnie działa na rzecz rozwoju elektromobilności w Polsce. Wybiegamy myślą do przodu i już teraz dostrzegamy potencjał tego rynku, korzyści biznesowe, znaczenie dla ochrony środowiska i rozwoju innowacyjności polskiej gospodarki. Stąd nasze inwestycje w sektor elektromobilności, a ich wzorcowym przykładem jest powołana przez nas spółka ARP e-Vehicles.
Powstanie spółki ARP e-Vehicles doskonale wpisuje się w potrzeby polskiego transportu publicznego. W ostatnich latach coraz więcej samorządów przechodzi na niskoemisyjny transport publiczny, a od 2025 roku w miastach powyżej 100 000 mieszkańców autobusy spalinowe zostaną zastąpione elektrycznymi. Trend niskoemisyjnej komunikacji publicznej przekłada się na wzrost zamówień realizowanych dla samorządów przez ARP e-Vehicles.
Agencja Rozwoju Przemysłu jest naszym 100% właścicielem, dzięki któremu mamy finansowanie na naszą produkcję. Naszymi klientami są głównie miasta, gminy, związki powiatowe, powiaty i spółki komunalne, które realizują transport na terenie miast i gmin. Wszyscy ci klienci wymieniają obecnie tabor spalinowy na nowoczesny, ekologiczny, elektryczny. Oprócz rynku polskiego jesteśmy zainteresowani rynkiem europejskim. W zeszłym roku pokazywaliśmy nasze auto na targach w Grecji, w Salonikach, gdzie spotkał się z bardzo dużym zainteresowaniem z uwagi na jego małe wymiary, które były bardzo dobre i bardzo dobrze się sprawdzały na greckich, wąskich ulicach.
Usprawnieniu produkcji sprzyja niedawna przeprowadzka firmy do Bydgoskiego Parku Przemysłowo-Technologicznego, jednego z największych parków tego typu w Polsce. Dzięki temu spółka zyskała przestrzeń do rozbudowy działu produkcji, a także znakomity przyczółek do dalszej ekspansji.
ARP e-Vehicles to nie jest zwykła inwestycja. Jesteśmy dumni, że wspieramy projekt będący w pełni efektem polskiej myśli technologicznej i wytworem polskiego przemysłu. ARP e-Vehicles udowadnia, że polski kapitał i polska innowacyjność mają szansę konkurować jakością nawet na rynkach zagranicznych. Pierwszy polski autobus elektryczny produkowany w nowym bydgoskim zakładzie to także ważny krok w kierunku zrównoważonego rozwoju. Jest przyjazny nie tylko dla środowiska, ale przede wszystkim odpowiada lokalnym potrzebom. W Agencji Rozwoju Przemysłu chcemy, żeby zielony transport był łatwo dostępny nie tylko w wielkich miastach, ale także w Polsce gminnej i powiatowej.
Wałbrzyska Specjalna Strefa Ekonomiczna Investpark to aż 3 województwa, 174 gminy i 29 powiatów. Od początku funkcjonowania siedzibą spółki jest Wałbrzych, drugie największe miasto na Dolnym Śląsku. Dolny Śląsk to jeden z najszybciej rozwijających się regionów w całej Europie. Zróżnicowana kulturowo i bogata przyrodniczo część kraju, której dynamiczny wzrost zapewniają branże automotive, logistyka, IT i nowe technologie. Południe Polski to także systematyczne inwestycje w infrastrukturę drogową i kolejową. Wielkopolskie. Lokacja najstarszych polskich miast. Region bogaty w złoża węgla brunatnego i gazu ziemnego. Ponad 3,5 miliona mieszkańców i prężnie działająca sieć instytucji otoczenia biznesu wspierają branżę spożywczą, chemiczną i budowlaną. Wielkopolską strefę gospodarczą wybrali liderzy rynku, w tym m.in. Volkswagen, Rawak, Dino i Flex Films. Opolskie to zróżnicowany przemysł, wyjątkowa architektura i zabytkowe budownictwo. To region otwarty na innowacje i odnawialne źródła energii. Województwo napędza branża maszynowa i motoryzacyjna. To serce światowych potentatów. Mondelez, Mitsui High-Tech czy Umicore. Polska Strefa Inwestycji, w którą wpisuje się obszar zarządzany przez Wałbrzyską Specjalną Strefę Ekonomiczną, to pomoc publiczna, ulgi w podatku dochodowym i wsparcie dla inwestorów prywatnych. Intensywność pomocy publicznej na terenach zarządzanych przez Wałbrzyską Specjalną Strefę Ekonomiczną sięga od 20 do aż 60% w zależności od lokalizacji inwestycji. Investpark to jednak nie tylko przedsiębiorcy i miejsca pracy, ale także strategiczne przedsięwzięcia własne, w tym lokalne centra biznesu i hale przemysłowo-magazynowe w aż 6 atrakcyjnych lokalizacjach. Współpraca z nami to także kompleksowe doradztwo biznesowe, networking i wsparcie wymiany handlowej, nowoczesne centrum szkoleniowe, wspólna grupa zakupowa i inwestycje we wspólną przyszłość w ramach klastrów edukacyjnego, motoryzacyjnego i lotniczego. W Wałbrzyskiej Specjalnej Strefie Ekonomicznej bije serce najważniejszych światowych inwestycji. Investpark znajduje się na skrzyżowaniu strategicznych szlaków handlowych i komunikacyjnych. To najatrakcyjniejsza lokalizacja biznesowa wybierana zarówno przez polskich przedsiębiorców, jak i globalne marki. Strefa to optymalne położenie geopolityczne i lokalizacja atrakcyjna dla biznesu. To dogodne połączenia drogami ekspresowymi, rozbudowany system linii kolejowych i dostępność do międzynarodowych portów lotniczych. Wałbrzyska Specjalna Strefa Ekonomiczna. Od 25 lat wspólnie rozwijamy gospodarkę Polski i regionu.
Od ponad 30 lat edukujemy i wspieramy przedsięwzięcia ekologiczne na rzecz zielonej transformacji. Jesteśmy pełni zielonej energii i podajemy ją dalej. Naszym klientom dostarczamy nowoczesne rozwiązania finansowe oraz oferujemy doradztwo ekspertów. Zapewniamy narzędzia, by skutecznie mierzyć się z wyzwaniami klimatycznymi poprzez redukcję zużycia zasobów naturalnych czy wzrost zastosowania odnawialnych źródeł energii. Kredytowaliśmy dziesiątki tysięcy inwestycji proekologicznych o wartości powyżej 52 miliardów złotych. Projekty społeczne realizujemy poprzez programy Fundacji BOŚ oraz przy zaangażowaniu naszych pracowników w roli wolontariuszy. Dobra energia wraca, zielona także. Otrzymany w 2021 roku rating ESG plasuje nas w gronie 18% najlepiej ocenianych banków na świecie. Nasz zapał do zielonej transformacji nie maleje. Nieustannie szukamy nowych dróg rozwoju. Inwestujemy w zieloną przyszłość.